in the darkest corner of the world, where hope goes to die and humanity is stripped away layer by layer, something impossible happened. This is not a story of escape. This is not a story of justice. This is a story of light breaking through absolute darkness. This is the story of how a man in chains found freedom, and how his jailer became the key. The year was 2003. The place? A detention facility so notorious that its very name sent chills down the spines of even the most hardened men. The rules were simple: survive, stay silent, and never, ever make eye contact with the guards. But one prisoner was about to break every rule. And in doing so, he would change everything. They called him Prisoner 247. His real name had been taken from him the moment he arrived, replaced by a number stamped on his uniform and burned into his identity. He had been accused of crimes he swears he didn't commit, thrown into a cell barely large enough to stand in, and forgotten by the world outside. Days blurred into weeks. Weeks dissolved into months. Time became meaningless in the perpetual twilight of concrete walls and fluorescent lights. But Prisoner 247 had something that couldn't be taken away. Something that would become the most dangerous weapon in that entire facility. He had faith. Every night, in the darkness of his cell, he would pray. Not out loud, of course. That would bring punishment swift and severe. Instead, he would whisper so quietly that even the rats in the corners couldn't hear him. He would press his forehead against the cold floor and speak to the one who sees everything, even in places where light refuses to go. And someone was watching. Guard Hassan had worked at the facility for 7 years. 7 years of breaking men, of watching souls crumble, of becoming numb to suffering. He had seen prisoners beg, scream, bargain, and break. But he had never seen anyone pray. Not like this. Not with this quiet, unshakable conviction that seemed to defy the very walls around them. At first, Hassan dismissed it. Another religious fanatic, he thought. Another man clinging to fairy tales because reality was too harsh. But night after night, as he made his rounds past cell 247, he couldn't help but pause. There was something different about this prisoner. While others descended into madness or despair, Prisoner 247 seemed to grow stronger. More peaceful. As if he had found something in that cell that Hassan had been searching for his entire life. One night, Hassan broke protocol. He stopped at the cell door and watched through the small window. Prisoner 247 was in prostration, his lips moving silently, tears streaming down his face. But these weren't tears of pain. Hassan had seen enough tears of agony to know the difference. These were tears of something else. Connection. Surrender to something greater than the hell they were living in. For the first time in 7 years, Hassan felt something crack inside his chest. A wall he had built brick by brick to survive this job began to crumble. And he realized something terrifying. He was more imprisoned than the man in the cell. The next morning, during the routine check, Hassan did something unprecedented. He spoke to Prisoner 247. Not with the usual barked commands or threats. He asked a question. "What do you pray for?" The prisoner looked up, surprised. Guards didn't ask questions. Guards didn't acknowledge prisoners as human beings. For a moment, silence hung between them like a thread that could snap at any moment. "I pray for peace," Prisoner 247 finally answered, his voice raspy from disuse. "For my family. For my enemies. And for those who guard me." Hassan felt those words like a punch to the gut. This man prayed for him? After everything? After the beatings, the humiliation, the stolen dignity? Why? Hassan asked, the word escaping before he could stop it. "Because you're suffering too," the prisoner said simply. "Your chains just look different from mine." That conversation should have ended there. Hassan should have walked away, locked the door, and never looked back. But he didn't. Instead, he found himself returning night after night, drawn by something he couldn't name. They began to talk. Carefully at first, in whispered exchanges during Hassan's rounds when the other guards were distracted or asleep. Prisoner 247 told Hassan about his life before this place. About his children who were growing up without him. About his wife who he hoped was managing without his support. About his faith that had carried him through every dark moment of his life, and was carrying him still. And Hassan, for the first time in years, began to tell his own story. About the man he used to be before this job hardened him. About the dreams he'd abandoned. About the prayers he'd stopped saying because he couldn't reconcile a merciful God with the cruelty he witnessed and participated in every day. "You think God exists in a place like this?" Hassan asked one night, his voice bitter. "I know he does," prisoner 247 replied. "Because if he can reach me here, in the darkest pit of human cruelty, then he can reach anyone, anywhere. Even you, brother Hassan." That word, brother, it shattered something in Hassan's soul. When was the last time someone had called him brother? When was the last time someone had looked at him and seen a human being instead of a monster in a uniform? Weeks passed. Their conversations grew longer, deeper. Prisoner 247 began to teach Hassan about Islam. Not the distorted version Hassan had been fed by propaganda and prejudice, but the real teachings. About mercy, justice, compassion, and submission to the Creator of all things. Hassan learned about the 5 pillars. About prayer as a direct connection to God without intermediaries. About charity, fasting, and the pilgrimage. But most importantly, he learned about the Shahadah, the declaration of faith that marks the entrance into Islam. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger, prisoner 247 would recite softly. It's simple, Hassan. But it changes everything. It means you recognize the truth. That there is one creator, one judge, one source of all meaning in this chaotic universe. And that Muhammad, peace be upon him, was his final messenger to humanity. Hassan felt pulled in 2 directions. Part of him wanted to embrace this truth that resonated in his bones. Another part of him was terrified of what it would mean. How could he declare faith in a religion of peace when he had caused so much suffering? How could he claim to submit to God when he had played God over these prisoners for so long? One night, the facility descended into chaos. A riot broke out in Block C. Alarms screamed. Guards rushed through corridors. Prisoners shouted and crashed against bars. In the confusion, Hassan found himself alone in the corridor near cell 247. A group of prisoners had escaped their cells in the chaos. They were armed with makeshift weapons, their eyes wild with years of accumulated rage. They saw Hassan isolated and outnumbered. This was their moment of revenge. Hassan felt time slow down. This was it. The reckoning for 7 years of cruelty. He closed his eyes, waiting for the impact. But it never came. Instead, he heard a voice. Prisoner 247's voice, ringing out clear and commanding, "Stop. This man is under my protection." Hassan's eyes snapped open. The prisoner had somehow squeezed through the food slot of his cell door, barely wide enough for a human to fit, and now stood between Hassan and the mob of angry prisoners. "He's one of them," someone shouted. "He's a human being," prisoner 247 replied firmly. "And we are Muslims. We don't repay evil with evil. We repay it with justice and mercy." The prisoners hesitated, their weapons wavering. They respected prisoner 247. He had earned that respect through years of quiet dignity and kindness even toward those who shared in his suffering. "Go back to your cells," prisoner 247 commanded. "This is not the way." Slowly, reluctantly, the prisoners dispersed back into the shadows. The riot was quelled not by force, but by the moral authority of one man who refused to let darkness win. Hassan stared at the prisoner in shock. "You saved me. After everything I've done to you. Everything we've done here. Why?" Prisoner 247 smiled sadly. "Because that's what my faith teaches me. To see the humanity even in my oppressor. To understand that you're as much a victim of this system as I am. And because I see what you're struggling with, Hassan. You're standing at a crossroads. And I wanted you to live long enough to make the right choice." That night, after order was restored and Hassan's shift ended, he couldn't go home. He couldn't pretend anymore. He couldn't continue living as two people, the brutal guard and the man who yearned for something better. He returned to cell 247. His hands were shaking as he unlocked the small window. "Teach me," Hassan whispered. "Teach me the Shahadah." Tears streamed down prisoner 247's face as he pressed his hand against the door. "Are you sure, brother? Do you understand what you're declaring? I understand that I've been living a lie, Hassan replied, his voice breaking. I understand that you have something I've been searching for my whole life. I understand that if God's mercy is big enough to forgive someone like me, then I need that mercy more than I need my next breath. And so, in the darkest place on earth, at 3 in the morning, with the smell of tear gas still lingering in the air and the screams of prisoners echoing through concrete corridors, a miracle happened. Guard Hassan, hands pressed against the cold steel door of cell 247, repeated after the prisoner. Ashhadu in la ilaha illa Allah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. The words hung in the air like a sacred promise, like a key turning in an invisible lock. Hassan had just uttered the declaration that would transform his entire existence. The prisoner on the other side of the door was weeping openly now. "Welcome, brother," he whispered. "Welcome to freedom." It's a strange paradox, isn't it? The free man found his prison. The imprisoned man found his freedom. And in that exchange, both men were liberated in ways that have nothing to do with bars or uniforms. But this story doesn't end there. Because true faith isn't just a personal experience. It's a force that spreads like light through darkness, touching everything it encounters. Hassan's transformation didn't go unnoticed. The other guards sensed something different about him. He stopped participating in the casual cruelty that had become routine. He treated prisoners with basic human dignity. He would slip extra food into cells when no one was looking. He started praying in secret during his breaks. Other prisoners noticed too. Word spread through the facility, Guard Hassan had become Muslim. The guard who had once been feared was now learning to pray from the very men he used to torment. It was unprecedented. It was scandalous. It was beautiful. One by one, other guards began to approach Hassan with questions. What had changed him? What had he found? Some came out of curiosity. Others came because they too were drowning in the darkness of that place and desperately needed a lifeline. Hassan would tell them about prisoner 247, about the man who prayed for his enemies, about faith that couldn't be broken by chains or torture or despair, about a religion that taught mercy in the midst of cruelty, hope in the midst of hopelessness, and light in the midst of darkness. Over the next 3 years, something extraordinary happened in that detention facility. 12 guards converted to Islam. 12 men who had made a living from cruelty found their way to compassion. And it all started with one prisoner who refused to let his circumstances define him, who chose faith over bitterness, and who saw a brother where everyone else saw an enemy. The administration eventually noticed the changes in the facility, the reduction in violence, the improved treatment of prisoners, the quiet revolution happening in the hearts of their staff. Some administrators were suspicious. Others were cautiously supportive. But none could deny that something profound had shifted in the atmosphere of that place. Prisoner 247 was eventually released after his case was reviewed. He had spent 8 years in detention for crimes he maintained he never committed. He walked out of that facility a free man in every sense of the word. Hassan still works in corrections, but now in a different facility with a focus on rehabilitation rather than punishment. He's now known by his Muslim name, Hassan Abdullah. He leads Friday prayers for a growing community of former guards and prisoners who found Islam in the unlikeliest of places. And here's the truly remarkable part. Hassan and prisoner 247, whose real name is Ahmad, remain close friends to this day. They speak every week. They visit each other's families. They work together on prison reform initiatives, trying to bring humanity back to a system that so often strips it away. Ahmad says that his years in detention were the hardest of his life, but also the most meaningful. I wouldn't wish that suffering on anyone, he explains. But I also wouldn't trade what I learned about faith, perseverance, and human nature. In that cell, I discovered that no one can imprison your soul unless you let them. And I discovered that God uses the most broken circumstances to create the most beautiful miracles. Hassan adds, I thought I was the one with power in that facility. I had the keys, the uniform, the authority. But I was the one in chains. Ahmad had nothing but faith, and that made him the freest person I'd ever met. He didn't just teach me the Shahadah. He taught me what it means to truly submit to God. And in that submission, I found the freedom I'd been searching for my entire life. This story raises profound questions that echo far beyond the walls of one detention facility. How do we maintain our humanity in inhumane circumstances? Where does true power really lie? What makes a person free, and what makes them imprisoned? We live in a world obsessed with external freedom. Freedom to do what we want, go where we please, speak our minds without restriction. These are important freedoms. But Ahmad and Hassan discovered something deeper. They discovered that the most important freedom is internal. It's the freedom from hatred, from bitterness, from despair. It's the freedom that comes from knowing your purpose, your creator, your ultimate destination. You can be physically free but spiritually imprisoned, chained by materialism, ego, anxiety, and meaninglessness. Or you can be physically imprisoned but spiritually free, liberated by faith, purpose, compassion, and connection to something greater than yourself. Think about that. In your own life, what imprisons you? Is it fear? Anger? Resentment? The opinions of others? The pursuit of things that never truly satisfy? Or have you found the key that Ahmad discovered in that cell? The key of surrender to the one who created you? The Shahadah that Hassan learned isn't just a formula of words. It's a declaration of liberation. When you say, "There is no God but Allah," you're declaring your freedom from all the false gods that demand your worship, money, status, pleasure, power, other people's approval. You're saying that none of these things deserve your ultimate allegiance or have power over your soul. And when you say, "Muhammad is the messenger of Allah," you're declaring that there's a path forward, a guidance that's been given to humanity, a way to live that brings peace to the individual and justice to society. This is what Ahmad embodied in that cell. This is what Hassan saw and couldn't resist. This is what transformed not just two men, but an entire network of people connected to that place. Stories like this are happening all over the world, in places we'd never expect. In prisons, on battlefields, in hospitals, in homeless shelters. Wherever darkness seems to reign supreme, faith finds a way to break through. Because that's the nature of truth. It doesn't need perfect circumstances to flourish. In fact, it often shines brightest in the darkest places. Today, Hassan and Ahmad travel together, telling their story to anyone who will listen. They speak at universities, interfaith gatherings, community centers, and yes, even at other prisons. Their message is consistent. No one is beyond redemption. No circumstance is beyond hope. And no place is too dark for the light of faith to penetrate. They've inspired countless people. Former prisoners who now mentor at-risk youth. Former guards who now advocate for humane treatment of all people, regardless of their past. Families divided by different beliefs who found common ground in the universal values of compassion and human dignity. But perhaps most importantly, they've inspired people to look at their own lives differently. To ask the hard questions. Where am I imprisoned by my own choices? Who have I written off as beyond hope? What would it take for me to find the kind of freedom that comes from genuine faith and submission to a higher purpose? The facility where this story took place has been reformed significantly. The worst abuses have been addressed. The culture has shifted. And while it's still far from perfect, it's a testament to what can happen when even one person chooses to stand for dignity and compassion in the midst of brutality. This is the power of the Shahadah. This is the power of genuine faith. Not faith as a cultural identity or a political weapon, but faith as a lived reality. Faith that transforms the person who holds it and, through them, transforms the world around them. Ahmad says he often thinks back to that first night when Hassan stopped at his cell and asked what he prayed for. "I didn't know it at the time," Ahmad reflects, "but God was answering my prayers in real time. I had been praying for my jailers, asking God to soften their hearts. I never imagined he would do it so literally and so completely. It reminded me that we should never underestimate the power of sincere prayer, and we should never assume we know how God will answer." Hassan adds, "People ask me if I resent the years I spent as a guard in that facility. I don't. Yes, I did terrible things that I deeply regret. Yes, I caused suffering that I can never fully atone for. But those years led me to Ahmad. They led me to Islam. They led me to discover my purpose. God used my darkest chapter to write the most beautiful story of my life. That's the mercy of Allah. As we conclude this remarkable story, let's reflect on what we've witnessed. We've seen a prisoner who became a teacher, a jailer who became a student, a place of death that became a birthplace of faith, a system designed to break spirits that instead built souls. We've seen the Shahadah pronounced not in a beautiful mosque with marble floors and ornate calligraphy, but in a cold, concrete corridor surrounded by suffering. And maybe that's exactly as it should be. Because Islam, at its core, isn't about beautiful buildings or elaborate rituals. It's about submission to God in every circumstance, especially the hardest ones. The next time you hear the call to prayer, think of Ahmad in his cell, whispering to his creator in the darkness. The next time you see someone in uniform, think of Hassan discovering that the real authority lies with God alone. The next time you feel imprisoned by your circumstances, remember that the keys to your freedom are already in your hands. Faith isn't about escaping difficulty. It's about transforming it. It's about finding meaning in suffering, purpose in pain, and light in darkness. It's about recognizing that no matter where you are or what you've done, you're never too far from the mercy of your Creator. Ahmad taught Hassan the Shahadah in the darkest place on earth. But in doing so, he proved that there is no place so dark that the light of truth cannot reach. There is no heart so hard that God cannot soften it. There is no soul so lost that divine guidance cannot find it. This is not just Ahmad's story. This is not just Hassan's story. This is a universal story about the human condition and the search for meaning that defines us all. Whether you're in a prison cell or a palace, whether you wear chains or a crown, you're facing the same fundamental question. What will you submit to? What will you allow to define you? What will you worship with your time, energy, and devotion? Choose wisely, because the difference between freedom and imprisonment has nothing to do with walls and everything to do with what's in your heart. Ashhadu in la ilaha illa Allah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. These are the words that set Hassan free. These are the words that Ahmad held onto when everything else was stripped away. These are the words that have guided over 1 billion people across 14 centuries through every imaginable circumstance. And they're waiting for you too, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever your circumstances. The door to freedom is always open. The key is already in your hand. All you have to do is declare the truth. Thank you for listening to this story of faith, transformation, and the unbreakable human spirit. May it inspire you to look for light even in dark places, to see potential for change even in the hardest hearts, and to never give up hope that tomorrow can be different from today. Because if change is possible in the darkest detention facility on earth, then change is possible anywhere. Even in you. Even in me. Even in the seemingly impossible situations we all face. That's not just hope. That's the promise of faith. That's the power of the Shahadah. That's the truth that set 2 men free and continues to liberate souls across the world, one declaration at a time. May we all find our freedom, whatever chains we wear. May we all discover the truth, whatever darkness we face. And may we all become, like Ahmad, lights that shine for others even when we ourselves are surrounded by shadow. This is the story of how a jailer taught his prisoner the Shahadah. This is the story of how a prisoner taught his jailer the Shahadah. Actually, it's both. Because in the economy of faith, the roles of teacher and student, free and imprisoned, oppressor and oppressed, all blur together in the presence of a truth greater than any of us. And that truth is simply this: La ilaha illa Allah. There is no God but Allah. And in that recognition lies freedom itself.